This video contains sensitive conversation that may disturb some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Milk. It's pure and wholesome, rich in vitamin D and calcium. It grows strong bones. Your mom made you drink it before bedtime because it made you sleepy and you'd wake up super strong without a risk of osteoporosis. So for what reason on the planet does every single psychopath character in media drink milk? Why is that significant? Why is milk the official TM beverage of all sorts of fascists, murderers, psychopaths, and overall constipated man-children? My name is Melody and this channel is called Melody Ever After. I do all sorts of videos on all things creepy, geeky, and spooky, and today we are delving deep into the world of soured milk. Milk, like evil, is a beverage best served cold, but it also tastes like it voted against women's rights. If you haven't noticed milk being used as a symbol of corruption, evil, and debauchery in media, I'm begging you just to go back and watch some of your favorite cult classic movies, because you'll start seeing a pattern. Milk being used to represent evil in media is not a quirky director's choice coincidence, okay? It's deliberate. In so many ways, milk is symbolic of childhood, innocence, and purity. So when you see a super villain, like I'm talking the most disgusting character you can imagine, drinking a cool glass of milk, it's performative, and that's terrifying. And with milk's very complicated and corrupted history in the United States, I also think it's very, very clever. Milk in media and film repeatedly shows up next to white supremacists, authoritarian, totalitarian dictator figures, and emotionally stunted men with god complexes. Welcome to today's video. Milk is a shorthand symbolism in media for purity that is weaponized. And here's where it gets weird. Milk doesn't just have a history of representing all of these evil, twisted things in media, it also has a pretty complicated and dark history in real life too. Government stock market manipulation, government subsidies, propaganda campaigns, white nationalist dog whistles, and an entire industry built on forced reproduction. And I don't really find that a coincidence. Milk has always been framed as wholesome, patriotic, and family-friendly. But what if that purity was manufactured and milk has been at the center stage of control and corruption all along? I am begging you to stay with me. I know I'm doing the Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where I've got all my red lines and I'm going crazy, I'm going insane, but like, listen, you've got to stick with me on this. Hold on to your udders. It's about to get milky in here. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I think it's important that we talk about what milk symbolizes culturally, specifically for the American people. Because as I mentioned in the intro, it's extremely common for in cult classic films and media, the supervillain is drinking, slurping on a big old glass of milk, alright? But why? What's the reason? Sure, supervillains have symbolically held lots of things, whether it's a short little glass of whiskey with a single square cube of ice in it, or a black coffee, or a villain-coated dirty martini, or even in some cases, a very fluffy white cat. But in many instances, like here, and here, villains are pretty deeply connected to milk. And that's because milk can very easily display the concept of corrupted innocence. It's the drink of toddlers. It's the drink of bedtime. It's the thing that your pediatrician threatened you with so you could get big, strong bones. I think one of the main reasons that milk shows up among evil characters is because it is so deeply interwoven into our society as something that is so necessary for sustaining life, but it also very easily spoils. It curdles, it goes bad, it gets sour. And symbolically, that really represents something else that spoils and gets sour when it's introduced to corruption, which is childlike innocence. Milk, historically, is one of the first things babies drink. It is a sustainer of life. It is very innocent and maternal in nature. So when directors put that milk in the hands of monsters, it's symbolic of innocence going sour. Aside from babies drinking milk as their very first substance, we associate milk with school lunches, cartoon mustaches, bedtime routines, happy little cows on farms, and all sorts of other cutesy imagery, really. So sure, it's soft and comforting and life-sustaining, but more importantly, it's something that we give someone who is vulnerable, who still needs protection, like babies and people with weak bones. Which, by the way, it feels deeply disturbing to watch a grown man slurp on it after just committing a war crime against humanity, like he's about to turn on some Saturday morning cartoons and get crazy with Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. In those moments in film and media, milk represents arrested development. It's a statement saying this character, as disgusting and evil as they are little bitty babies inside. They're little guys. This character, either by themselves internally or by the audience, is perceived in a childlike, immature way. And they've became, pun totally intended, spoiled. And in other contexts, a villain drinking milk represents the exploitation of women and marginalized communities, like people of color. And I know what you're thinking. Melody, this is an insane blue-haired moment. You're on a conspiracy binge right now and you need to calm down. I hear you and I totally understand why you would be thinking that. Because why would a character just doing something as innocent as drinking milk make them a bigot or even a villain? And you're right, I'm sure there's examples of lots of innocent characters drinking milk that aren't villains, but it's all about that context, baby, and you know I'm about to get into it. Firstly, I think it's because milk represents whiteness and purity in media. Milk is coded in a very specific way visually. It's white, but more than that, it's completely opaque. It looks sterile from the outside. It photographs very clean. And visually, on camera, it reads as pure, clean, untouched, etc. Milk is the color of blankness, a clean state, purity, virginity. We could keep going. In every single piece of media, there's a dark, scary color like black or dark red, and then there's a good color like bright gold or white, and those are just symbols of good and evil. I mean, yin and yang. It's a tale as old as time. Because historically, specifically in Western culture, white has been a symbol of purity. The color itself is a symbol of purity and innocence. So when a villain is seen drinking milk, the contrast is not only extremely stark in that way, but it also does something a little bit psychologically strange. When you pair an evil character drinking something as innocent as milk, it breeds tension and contrast. And this can be used in a few different ways and interpreted in a few different ways. Number one, it can be a guise for the villain to look more innocent by drinking something as infantile as milk. Milk can be used by villains in media to kind of be a moral camouflage to show that they're not threatening. It allows corruption to present itself as harmless, and it allows violence to look more infantilized. On the flip side of that, on the totally opposite end of this evil, milk is evil spectrum, if milk represents a childlike purity and innocence, and the villain is slurping his lips all over the glass and drinking it, it can also be a symbol of debauchery and the loss of innocence. When a villain is drinking something that we as a society idealize as pure, it can read as defilement. And once you notice that, you start seeing it everywhere in media. At least I did. So let's take a look at some of the two most popular examples of milk representing innocence, and that being used as a juxtaposition against the evil or used in tandem with the villain of the story. We're going to be looking at A Clockwork Orange and everybody's favorite show on Amazon Prime, The Boys. Both of these pieces of media connect milk to two main men characters who commit sexual violence or display deeply violent and predatory behavior in general throughout the duration of their movies or shows. And in both cases, milk not only infantilizes them, but it also acts as a type of accelerant. It drives them to commit more acts of evil. It incentivizes them. It's almost as if it is a drug. Firstly, in A Clockwork Orange, directed by Stanley Kubrick in 1971, based on Anthony Burgess's 1962 novel, we need to look at the milk bar. It's one of the most unsettling sets that you will ever see in a movie, and it's not a haunted house. There's no ghosts or chains or anything to make it inherently threatening or scary, except for the fact it's just really weird and off-putting. The Kurova milk bar is a milk bar that's full of naked female mannequins dispensing drug-laced milk from their breasts, designed to sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of ultra-violence. That is a quote from the movie. The drug-laced milk at the Kurova milk bar is designed to intoxicate you with the purpose of heightening your senses so that you can avoid your moral compass and do acts of violence and terror and crime, specifically against not just humanity, but specifically women. And I think it's important to note here that this drug-laced milk at the Kurova milk bar is dispensed to children. The fact that the milk that is laced with drugs at the Kurova milk bar is dispensed to children has a deeper sense of irony connected to it because milk is a symbol of childhood nourishment, as we have discussed. But in this instant, it is used by these youths to propel them into heinous, adults-only brutality. And this flips the traditional meaning of milk in our society upside down. The drink looks like nourishment and comfort, but it functions as a fuel for violence and femicide. I find that particularly poetic when you consider how milk itself is harvested. On these big, evil, industrial dairy farms, these cows are artificially inseminated and impregnated and forced to carry a calf to term. Then the calf is taken from the mother, and because the mother never got to nurse the calf, they are milked for a period that lasts abnormally longer than they should in nature. I did grow up on a farm and I did have cows, so I know for a fact that the milking process for cows is actually very relieving for these cows. But being repeatedly impregnated and having their calves taken away from them over and over and over again, and having the milking period last far longer than it's supposed to, that's all very psychologically and physically painful for the cattle. You know, we only had like maybe 15, 20 head of cows at a time, and this is not the case on small family-owned farms, but we're looking at the bigger picture. We're looking at this from a governmental, industrial, societal angle, and these factory farms are very, very cruel to their cows. Because of the nature of how milk is harvested, I believe that it is a very accurate and overall good symbol of femicide and misogyny, and we see this represented in the media A Clockwork Orange. The drug-induced milk at the Kurova milk bar comes from mannequins that are being used as milk dispensers, which inherently objectifies women as, well, milk dispensers. Now we're moving on to that absolute horror of a man-child, Homelander from Amazon Prime's The Boys. Homelander is framed as the ultimate American protector, or at least he has the potentiality to be that. He was chemically designed to keep our country safe. Laser eyes, super strength. The guy is virtually indestructible. He is the ultimate fantasy of righteous power. And yet, he uses these powers for absolute evil. And not only just evil, but also to taint the politics of an alternate United States, becoming a totalitarian, dictating force that inflicts idealism of misogyny, abuse, oppression, and violence onto the politics and therefore the people of this alternative America. And another little character quirk of him, he loves drinking milk. However, I want to add that he doesn't just love drinking milk casually. The show The Boys displays milk like a fish object. Tight close-up, slow pours, milk pooling on the top of your lips in a almost seductive way. It's deeply uncomfortable. In these scenes where Homelander is drinking milk, he's like breathing heavily, and it's almost inherently sexual. That's because in the show, milk serves as a physiological exposition to the ideas of evil and debauchery in powerful men in politics. He may be the toughest guy on the planet, but by being so obsessed with milk, it weirdly infantilizes him. Homelander was raised in a lab by Vought International. He has no maternal bond in his life, no mother. He was, for all intents and purposes, a test tube baby. The only parental figure he had growing up was a team of scientists watching him like some kind of experiment, and to be fair, he was. It's a little bit weird and ironic that this man who was engineered to be all-powerful had everything except a maternal bond. Because he was engineered to be the perfect stoic weapon, he was never nurtured. In the show, Milk becomes a symbolic replacement for this missing origin in Homelander's life. It's a form of age regression, which is a valid coping mechanism, except for when you fetishize it. This is where we're going to get into some very sensitive topics. I did give a viewer discretion earlier in the video, but I just want to give you another chance to either brace yourself or maybe click off. Homelander, aside from himself being a literal assailant, he doesn't have any kind of physical need for intimacy or sex. Throughout the show, at least for the beginning of it, he has no want or need for a partner. And aside from in the context of literal assault, he finds contact and intimacy kind of disgusting. And I think, obviously, this is because Homelander franchises the idea of being loved maternally. Enter his really freaky milk addiction. In the show, his addiction to milk represents a stand-in mother, arrested development, and emotional dependency masked as male dominance. Homelander wants that warmth. He wants to feel small and cared for, but he won't allow himself to be vulnerable, so he challenges this idea. He expresses it in a very toxic way. He wants to remain the most stone-cold, powerful being alive, but still experience the intimacy of maternal love. So what does he do? Oh, he just it. He takes the objectification of women to a level that really hasn't been explored in media before, and it's deeply disturbing. And this sexualization manifests in the form of being addicted to milk. I think it very poignantly represents a lot of the little man syndrome that we see in modern American politics, but the show doesn't stop there. It pushes it even further, because if you're an American and you may not be the biggest fan of our establishment right now, you know that systematically men are not the only people at fault, and women will also comply with this rhetoric and ideology. Another very corrupt character in the show, who is another quote-unquote superhero who goes by the name of Firecracker, really kind of puts gas on the fire with this one. In the show, Firecracker willingly induces lactation via hormone therapy to offer her breast milk to Homelander. Not in a sexual way. I did this to show my dedication to you and your ideology. This is because Firecracker is complicit to the kind of corruption that Homelander not only initiates, but also stands for. And she understands what he craves. So to get his validation, she uses breast milk as a maternal symbol of submission to him. It is weirdly sexual, but it is not at all romantic. It's basically her saying, I will be the source of your comfort, I will feed into your delusion, and I will validate your crime, because in this show, milk, just like in real life, is political, and it's a symbol of loyalty to that corruption, and it invites the cycle of damage and destruction and violence in this fictional country to continue. TLDR, big strong man still want to be treated like baby, but doesn't want to be vulnerable, so he infantilizes milk, which, by default, infantilizes him. Aside from infantilization, milk is also a symbol of, sadly, racism and white supremacy, and this is both represented in media and in real life. This is the one where, when I mentioned it in the intro, you probably thought I was a little bit crazy for, but honestly, specifically in the scene from Inglorious Basterds, directed by Quentin Tarantino, I don't think it's very arguable. Inglorious Basterds was the first piece of media to ever make me feel deeply uncomfortable about milk and its connotations in our society and media. And Quentin Tarantino uses milk as a symbol for corruption as early as the first scene of the film. In the movie, there is a character who is a Schnazi colonel named Hans Landa who requests a glass of milk 2 times, and they're pretty significant, poignant key moments of the film. The first time that this man requests a glass of milk is at Père Labadite's dairy farm, where he's interrogating the French farmer about whether or not he is harboring Jews in his home. This takes place during World War II, just for clarification if you haven't caught that yet. So he calmly requests a glass of milk and begins to drink it while he asks the man questions to basically incriminate himself. And it makes me uncomfortable because Hans Landa knows that Labadite is harboring the Jews under his floorboards. He's been walking around all day, sweaty in heavy gear, like he's wearing this big coat and this like thick belt. It's probably hot outside. He's been walking and he requests a glass of milk instead of water. Who does that? That's just weird. Later, he orders a glass of milk while he's talking with Shoshana for the first time, linking the drink to his predatory presence. What's even more disturbing is that Shoshana was the only survivor of her family to escape Hans Landa's execution while they were hiding under Labadit's home. Not only did Hans Landa ask for milk right before he murdered Shoshana's family, but he also requested it specifically upon meeting her for the first time when he found her sexually attractive. I think this very symbolically illustrates how fetishization and prejudice are often really deeply interrooted, and a lot of people who claim they want to exterminate an entire marginalized group often feel a sense of jealousy or attraction to them, and that's why they have so much internalized hatred. I mean, I'm thinking Count Frollo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame doing the exact same thing to Esmeralda because she's Romani. In the film Inglorious Basterds, the whiteness of milk also embodies the Schnazi's obsession with racial purity. I don't like censoring myself, but I have to do it on this channel. I'm so sorry. Some scholars and critics have noticed how milk imagery can echo beliefs within white supremacy, a concept that extremist groups have even embraced as an actual symbol of racial identity in real life. That's right, these people are identifying with milk. The next example of milk representing racism in media is in the film Get Out by Jordan Peele. In Jordan Peele's Get Out, milk appears deceptively in a simple but potent way. I do want to preface this by saying that Jordan Peele was actually interviewed by fans and they wanted to know if this was the case, but this scene that I'm about to talk about specifically was not meant to embody idealisms of racism or any kind of symbolic racism. The scene that Jordan Peele directed involving milk mainly was just supposed to show how quote-unquote weird Rose's character was. So everything that I'm about to talk about in this section was completely up to the audience's interpretation, but that didn't stop them from interpreting it in a symbolically racist way that even prompted them to ask the director, is this what you meant? I think the fact that the undertones of racism in this scene in connection with milk was entirely incidental, and it proves how well milk works as a symbol of colorism and racism in society. So disclaimer, this isn't canon, but it was poignant enough that people noticed. In the scene, Rose is eating this vibrant, colorful cereal dry, in a bowl, completely separate from a glass of milk which she is drinking with a straw, and she's picking up cereal, putting it in her mouth, and then drinking the milk after. She's deliberately keeping them separate. And I know, realistically, people do this to keep their cereal crunchy, so it doesn't get soggy in the milk, but you gotta see this scene. On camera, it just comes off as really weird, and that was the goal. Jordan Peele did want this to seem odd, but here's where the speculation comes in. Fans believed that milk in this scene was a symbol of uncontaminated whiteness. The cereal being dyed all of these different colors were kept segregated from the pure milk. And you might still think I'm reaching. I mean, I wouldn't blame you for still thinking I'm reaching. So let's look at a terrifying, disgusting, bone-chilling, absolutely deplorable real-life example. Again, viewer discretion is advised. What we're about to talk about is extremely heavy. Beyond cinema and media, real-life white supremacists have adopted milk as a symbol of white identity. In 2017, a self-identified group of white supremacists protested at anti-racist, BLM, and anti-Trump rallies. They protest by holding up racist signs and sloppily drinking gallons of milk and pouring it all over their bodies. Later, when police and other authorities accused them of being racist about it, they said, "Oh no, we're just doing that because we're anti-vegan. We're anti-vegan." But why would you be protesting anti-vegan causes at a BLM rally? Come on. Do you think we're stupid? Milk also became a symbol of white supremacy in other contexts, specifically social media, starting around 2016-2017. Framed as a symbol of white power, infamous white supremacist Richard Spencer, president of the white nationalist publication National Policy Institute, and Tim Treadstone, the extreme right-wing social media personality who goes by the name of Baked Alaska in his commentary work, which I'd like to add that Baked Alaska is a dairy-based dessert that is primarily white, but I guess that could be a coincidence. Both of these men mysteriously added the milk emoji to their Twitter bios in 2017. These white supremacist online fringe groups also use milk in a very different way to establish a sort of dominancy among marginalized communities. They justify white supremacy by referencing a map of lactose intolerance in the world, geographically. They will post this map of where lactose intolerance occurs geographically in the world, and I have actually seen this picture in TikTok comment sections. It's used as a dog whistle to identify one another, particularly on Black or POC creators' videos, or in videos that are talking about concepts of racism. They will post this image in the comment section to target the creator for future harassment or to antagonize them. And what does lactose intolerance have to do with racism, you ask? Oh, strap in. Because lactose intolerance specifically affects people more heavily in areas that are closer to the equator, less populated with a white population, for example, Africa, Latin America, and in Asia, the very racist people online will use this image to basically justify white supremacy, saying, look, we can drink milk and you can't. That makes us the better race. Have fun bubble gutting, is all I have to say, because who gives a shit? Who gives a shit if you're lactose intolerant? These people are so chronically online. I know I could collectively take this entire fringe group and count the amount of women that they have touched in a consensual way on my right hand. This kind of behavior using milk as white supremacist imagery isn't mainstream culture. It's fair to say that this is a very weird, dark fringe sect of the alt-right corners of the internet. But the point still stands. This imagery still kind of creeps into the way that storytellers will use milk as symbolism in stories about racial terror and power structures. By associating milk with characters like Landa and Rose, films tap into the broader cultural perception that milk, once a signifier of innocence, can also stand in for a particular kind of whiteness, one that masks violence with superficial purity that just isn't real. Guys, touch grass. I don't get why they care. I'll tell you why they care. I'll tell you why racists are racist. It's because they're evil. It's because they have been corrupted by evil. I don't think people are born evil, but I think they've been corrupted by evil. But the truth is, even outside of media, milk has been a symbol at center stage for corruption. Let's take a look at the US government. The US government has subsidized dairy farmers for literal decades. We produce an insane amount of milk in the United States that we can't drink. We can't drink, and God knows we're not going to send it to places that need it, or to people that need it. Hell, there's people in our country that need it. We aren't sending it there either. Back to what I was saying, in the United States, farmers produce a metric butt ton of milk. Like in, please God, somebody drink this levels of milk. So why don't we just stop producing so much milk? Well, to answer that, we're gonna have to go all the way back to the 1930s. About a year ago, when I wasn't very good at YouTube, I made a video about all the conspiracies surrounding milk in America, specifically around the overproduction of milk and our super secret government-owned cheese caves. Yeah, if you don't know about the cheese caves, maybe go check out that video. I'll spare you some torture though. My mic quality is not great in that one. So to explain how the government has corrupted the stock market using milk as a weapon, I'll let amateur YouTube Melody explain this one.
During the Great Depression, FDR created a corporation that was structured by the government called the Commodity Credit Corporation, otherwise known as the CCC. This was extremely beneficial because back during the Depression, the CCC would monitor certain markets specifically regarding the exports and commodities within the U.S. at that time. That was when the CCC decided that monitoring the dairy profits in the United States was essential to all of the other economics within the U.S. to make sure that the Depression didn't get much worse than it already was. In 1948, the CCC eventually became a complete federal entity, meaning that it was owned and managed by the United States government and had high ties to the United States Department of Agriculture. But before it was federalized into the United States government, they had already agreed that in order to artificially inflate the milk market, the CCC would buy up milk farmers' excess milk in order to keep the market going strong during the Great Depression. Also keep the farmers producing enough milk to power the American people. What did they do with all that milk, you ask? Well, that's a surprise we're going to talk about later. But the bottom line is that now the U.S. government was pretty much forced into buying a certain amount
fine and good until the energy crisis in the 1970s led to the price of milk absolutely skyrocketing. This led to so many impoverished families being unable to afford milk. Now no one can afford milk. The government tells dairy farmers they need to produce more milk because the price of it on the market is so high because it's in so high of demand. And then the government tells them, but you're not allowed to sell the milk to the market at market value because that's way too expensive. So you want me to make more milk, but then not sell the milk? And the president at the time, Jimmy Carter, was like, yeah, you've got a point. I got it! Jimmy Carter decided that he was going to buy up all excess milk from United States dairy farmers. This went from the US buying a portion of excess milk to now buying all excess milk. And not just milk, also other dairy products like butter, cheese, whatever. So all the dairy farmers were like, and they started producing milk like absolute crazy. Now, all of the dairy farmers in the US were producing as much milk as humanly or cowardly possible because government has agreed to buy anything that all the dairy farmers have left over. We did it, guys. You made enough milk. Thanks for hitting your quotas. We brought the price of milk back down. You can stop touching the cow there now. Oh, hell no. You said you were gonna buy all my extra milk, and what do you think I'm doing? You can probably see where this led. A giant influx of government-owned milk and cheese and various dairy products. Thanks, Melody. I really appreciate it. So what happens when the government is producing, or rather endorsing, the production of more milk than anybody could ever naturally desire? Like I said earlier, at first the government tried to take all this milk, turn it into cheese, and store it in these super secret underground caves in Springfield, Missouri. But long story short, we ran out of room and we had to send that cheese to other people. So then we had to think of a way to get people to buy the milk before we had to turn it to cheese. Enter the Got Milk campaign. Got Milk campaign wasn't just a cute little ad campaign, I have a lot of bad feelings about the Got Milk campaign. The Got Milk campaign was a coordinated, industry-backed effort funded by dairy checkoff programs, aka the US government, more specifically the US Department of Agriculture. Meaning that dairy farmers collectively pool money, with federal oversight of course, to promote milk consumption. Pop stars, Olympians, celebrities, your favorite idols, okay? We're all a part of this Got Milk campaign. You know the one? You saw it in the school cafeterias. Plastered up posters of celebrities and Olympians with a little milk mustache. Cute. This campaign was done by the USDA as a guise of, stay hydrated, get your calcium, get your vitamin D, keep America healthy. But the truth of the matter was, there's a lot more efficient ways to get vitamin D, hydration, and calcium than milk. In fact, milk is not that high in those nutrients when you look at some other alternatives, like almond milk, spinach, multivitamins. There's a lot more efficient ways to get that into your system. And those ways don't involve disrupting your bowels, by the way. You don't get bubble guts from taking a multivitamin. The Got Milk campaign consistently twisted the public's perception of how healthy, or rather how unhealthy, milk actually was. And everything's fine in moderation. I'm not saying that milk is an unhealthy substance to drink, but what I am saying is lots and lots of Americans are lactose intolerant or have milk allergies. If it was something that was that essential to life, like, say, water, a lot less people would have allergic reactions to it. But it was already too late, and the Got Milk campaign was already being pushed on the nation's youth. This is kind of a side tangent, but I remember being in my kindergarten class when a man I didn't know came in with a crate of plastic milk cartons and a camera. And he told us to drink the milk and to get messy, get it on your faces, pour it on your shirts, just cover yourselves in milk, which in the heat of August, that was a stupid idea. But he told us to drink this milk, he told us to smile, he told us to get it on our lips, and I remember him saying, no, don't wipe it off, I gotta take a picture. Then he took pictures of each of us and said that these images would be used in like state and local news, on Got Milk shit. I don't know. It was spreading awareness for how kids should drink more milk. As a child, I did not have the mental capacity nor the language to explain why a strange man coming into my classroom, asking me to put milk on my face and taking my photo made me uncomfortable. But as an adult, I see a couple of things wrong with that. Why were we as kindergartners used as a promotional object for an agricultural surplus campaign? We can't consent to that, and we definitely couldn't consent to taking a picture that could be so badly misconstrued. Let me be clear, this is me being a little bit black helicopter. There's no evidence that the Got Milk campaign had any ill intent towards children. But that doesn't automatically make it harmless. Publicizing photos of children that have white liquid around their mouths, that's weird. I'm really sorry, I hate to say it, but I know that if I had a hypothetical child and someone, without my permission, went into their classroom, asked them to pour milk on their mouths, and took their picture and put it on the news for just any psychopath to see, I'd be fighting mad. Even if there was no ill intent behind it, children cannot, in good faith, consent to being publicized or used as propaganda in that way. They damn sure don't know when to recognize when something could be easily misconstrued as content. There, I said it, it's weird. Milk is used in media because it itself is a symbol of purity, and purity is easily corrupted. And even though there are countless pieces of media where milk is being depicted with supervillains, it didn't start there. It actually started with real life corruption. When you see milk in media, it's rarely just a drink, especially if it's along the topics of historical fiction, horror, genres like that. I promise you it's deliberate, because it's a weaponized symbol. It's no coincidence that milk always shows up in horror stories and historical fiction next to characters who are men that are fascist, abusers, and little babies who never really grew up. So the next time you're watching some kind of horror film and you see milk, maybe think about it a little bit, because there's a good chance it could be a symbol of how our society is soured. My name is Melody, thank you so much for watching this video. My channel is called Melody Ever After. If you liked this video, please leave me a comment. If you didn't like this video, why are you still here? Like, what are you doing, hater? Go check out my channel if you enjoyed this video and leave me a comment down below. I post many times a week, and I stream specifically horror games. I play a lot of horror games. I do a lot of little mini deep dives and longer deep dives on all things freaky, geeky, or spooky, so if that sounds like something that would interest you, let me know. I am also doing a narrative horror story series where I will be reading and narrating a new horror story every single week. So if you need something a little bit spooky and atmospheric to do your chores to, or even fall asleep to, I don't judge, check me out. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Until next time.